Since the beginning of the conflict, one fact remains clear: control of the skies has been an impossible dream for Ukraine. The Russian aerial force boasts an unmatched number of advanced aircraft, swarms of jet fighters ready to dominate. Imagine the roar of engines overhead, the smell of burning fuel, and the terrifying certainty that Ukrainian pilots face near insurmountable odds. But everything is about to change. Could this be the turning point? Russia's air dominance was born from a massive fleet of 900 fourth-generation and higher jets, around 14th-generation Su-57s, dozens of Su-35s, Su-27s, and Su-30s, alongside 134 Su-34 bombers. Their number seemed unstoppable. Yet, by late 2024, disaster struck. Russia lost over a third of its fleet. At least 130 fighters and 146 helicopters vanished in flames or wreckage. Still, the Ukrainian Air Force faced even worse devastation. Once boasting about 120 aging Soviet fighters, MiG-29s, Su-24s, Su-25s, and Su-27s, their numbers dwindled. Now, only a handful remain operational. The losses are staggering: over 100 aircraft lost, including 89 fighters, leaving just a few fighters left to defend Ukraine's skies. The challenge was overwhelming. Russia's industry tried to keep pace, producing 22 to 49 jets annually, yet that barely covered its losses. Ukraine, armed with limited Soviet-era aircraft, couldn't rebuild quickly enough. They improvised, refurbishing older jets, trying to stay afloat. But their aircraft were aging, vulnerable, and easy targets. The hope sparked in 2024, the delivery of American F-16s and French Mirage 2000 FS. Optimism soared. Could these aircraft finally tip the balance? Yet, reality cast a shadow. Only a handful arrived. That's hardly enough to match Russia's aerial might. By late 2025, Ukraine had received just 7 F-16s, 3 of which had already been lost. Plans called for 85, scattered across NATO nations such as the Netherlands, Denmark, Belgium, and Norway. France committed around 20 Mirage 2000 FS, with the first 3 already in service. But even with this many planes, the delta was enormous. Russia's air force remained dominant, the skies filled with the distant hum of power and the thunder of impending storms. Can Ukraine's fragile hopes survive this relentless assault? Or will these newer fighters become mere shadows of victory, a fleeting glimpse of hope in a brutal war? But what if this was just the beginning? What if a revolutionary idea could finally outsmart Russia's skies? Imagine this: a fighter jet designed for the most unforgiving terrain, rugged, scattered airstrips, hidden highways. These jets could land and take off from the roughest surfaces, avoiding the heavily defended, obvious air bases. That's the promise of the Swedish-designed Gripen E-series. Built in the 1980s to withstand Soviet strikes, its design was forged in the shadow of danger, ready for a brutal, unpredictable battlefield. This aircraft was made to survive missile attacks, to operate from highway strips deep inside enemy territory. It is the perfect fit for Ukraine's scattered, vulnerable airfields. With tall landing gear and reinforced wings, it can dodge debris and rocks, land on short, rough runways, and keep fighting. Its sleek, canard-equipped design doubles its ability to brake quickly and evade attacks. The ground shakes, engines roar. These jets could be the game-changer Ukraine desperately needs. Why did Sweden create such a resilient aircraft? Because they knew Soviet bombers would target traditional air bases, so they built a different kind of aircraft, one that could hide in plain sight. The same logic applies to Ukraine today, dispersing fighters across rugged, less obvious locations. But deploying these jets poses a serious challenge. Upgrading runways, resurfacing with resistant materials, these efforts become obvious to satellite spies. The risk of exposing the very locations needed for survival is immense, yet the alternative is worse. Once they transform these scattered strips into fighters' havens, the game truly changes. The choice of the Gripen isn't just about terrain. It's about strategy. As the global balance shifts and the United States reduces direct support, Europe steps in. European nations pledge to boost their militaries, aiming for 5% of GDP spent on defense by 2035, investing in resilient, adaptable weapons systems. Ukraine has begun to forge long-term alliances with the European defense industry, preparing for a future that demands independence from distant powers. The Swedish aircraft, built to survive Soviet strikes and operate from harsh environments, embodies this future. It's the embodiment of resilience, a fighter designed to thrive in chaos, to hide in plain sight, and to outlast even the most relentless adversaries. Imagine Ukraine's scattered airfields, hidden highways amidst forests and farmlands, waiting for the right fighters to arrive. The roar of jets takes on a new meaning, sound of hope, resilience, and strategic mastery. These are not just planes, they are symbols of a nation fighting against impossible odds. Could this be the beginning of a new chapter, a story where ingenuity, resilience, and cunning finally outpace the brute force of a superpower? Or will the skies always belong to the giants, cloaked in smoke and fire? Only time will tell, but one thing is certain, Ukraine's fight is about to take a daring leap into the future. Since the beginning of the conflict in Ukraine, one thing has been painfully clear: Russia holds a commanding lead in the air. Their fleet boasts hundreds of aircraft, many astonishingly advanced, dominating the skies with sheer numbers. President Vladimir Putin's forces have dropped thousands of deadly bombs from their modern fighters, while Ukraine has struggled with limited defenses, few available systems to fight back. But what if this aerial imbalance could shift forever? Now, a groundbreaking development threatens to turn the tide, an unexpected alliance signed on October 22, 2025. It's a letter of intent between Ukraine and Sweden, a game-changer that could reshape everything. Ukraine is poised to receive a fleet of 100 to 150 Gripen E-series fighters, aircraft designed for rugged conditions and close combat. According to Sweden's Prime Minister, Ulf Kristersson, these jets could give Ukraine a truly formidable air force, something they desperately need. Imagine the roar of engines piercing the sky, a sudden surge in Ukrainian aerial might. These aircraft are specially crafted to operate from shorter, rough patches of terrain, perfect for Ukraine's unpredictable landscapes. They were designed during the Cold War to survive Soviet attacks and to launch from highway strips across the country, hidden, mobile, resilient. An air battle advantage like no other. But would Ukraine be able to deploy them effectively? The current picture is grim. Ukraine's air bases, inherited from the Soviet era, are vulnerable. Despite modernization since 1991, they remain easy targets for Russian missiles and drones. In enemy hands, they become death traps for Ukrainian fighters. The defense strategy has been to scatter aircraft across tiny airfields, makeshift runways, often unfit for delicate jets like the F-16 or Mirage 2000. These modern fighters demand pristine, well-maintained runways, long enough, clear of debris, and heavily guarded. Yet Ukraine's dispersed bases are exposed, vulnerable. The F-16s and Mirage 2000 FS, critical assets, are mainly used as mobile defenses, shooting down Russian missiles and drones from the rear. The battle for control hinges on their deployment, how to protect these precious jets from Russian strikes. Upgrading airfields is risky. Any large-scale resurfacing or extension work would be visible to enemy satellites, highlighting Ukraine's strategic plans. Each attempt to adapt becomes a tense game of hide-and-seek under ever-watchful eyes. The choice of the Swedish Gripen E-series is brilliant. It's built for rugged terrain, with short takeoff capabilities, designed precisely for operating from makeshift runways, perfect for Ukraine's dispersed, vulnerable airbases. They're a logical extension of Sweden's older design philosophy, built to withstand Soviet strikes and operate from highway strips scattered across the landscape. Isn't that exactly what Ukraine needs now? As the world watches, questions swirl: could these aircraft finally tip the balance? Or will Russia strike before Ukraine can fully adapt? The battlefield is changing, yet hidden dangers loom large. Can Ukraine's new airborne allies survive the brutal reality of war? Or will Russian satellites and missile strikes strike at their very foundation? The clock is ticking. The skies hold the answer, and the outcome remains uncertain. In the last part, we delved into the tense challenges of flying F-16s from scattered, makeshift airstrips, where every takeoff risks sucking in deadly debris through those hungry engine intakes, all while mobile crews hustle to protect these precious birds amid constant threats. Imagine this: could a single upgrade to dusty runways turn Ukraine's skies from a graveyard into a fortress? What if Russia's watchful eyes from space spot the changes, and unleash hell before a single jet can roar to life? Picture the acrid smell of scorched rubber and jet fuel hanging heavy in the air, as engineers in grimy overalls scramble under floodlights at dawn. Their hands, calloused and trembling from endless vigilance, pave over cracked Soviet-era concrete, resurfacing miles of runways that could decide the fate of a nation. But here's the gut-wrenching twist: no one dares make these fixes without fear. Why? Because every bulldozer's rumble, every fresh layer of asphalt, screams like a beacon to Russian satellites circling overhead. Justin Bronk, sharp-eyed analyst from Britain's Royal United Services Institute, think of it as Russie, warns that this work isn't subtle. It's a massive overhaul, grinding down old patterns, smoothing surfaces to shield engines from rogue pebbles or grit that could shred turbine blades mid-flight. And extensions? Those could stretch runways just right, but at what cost? Moscow spies on the ground whisper coordinates, turning these sites into bullseyes for incoming strikes. The ground shakes with distant booms, a stark reminder that safety is an illusion in this endless storm. Feel the frustration building, like a pilot gripping controls too tight? The F-16 demands perfection, a runway stretching 1,650 to 2,600 feet, varying with its load of fuel or weapons. That's not a luxury, it's a chain, limiting where these fighters can hide and strike. Fewer bases mean more exposure, more lives dangling on threads. Now, shift to the Mirage 2000, it needs at least 1,650 feet for liftoff at sea level, armed with just 2 infrared missiles. Many Ukrainian fields fall short, their uneven surfaces mocking the jet's sleek lines. Yet, here's the unexpected edge: this French beauty thrives in harsher spots. Shorter, rougher paths? It shrugs them off better than the finicky F-16, fitting like a glove into Ukraine's battered landscape of hidden paths and improvised strips. Soldiers hear the whine of engines straining against windswept dirt, tasting victory in the grit. But wait, could Sweden's Gripen E-series be the game-changer that humiliates Russia's aerial bullies? This isn't just any plane, it's a cunning rebuild for Ukraine's shattered wings, born from decades of shadowed genius. And as Europe steps up, what hidden alliances will tip the scales forever? The key to Ukraine's future air power might be hidden in a groundbreaking move by Sweden and Ukraine. Imagine a plane that can thrive on rough, scattered runways, a fighter designed to survive amid chaos and missile strikes. This could change everything in their war. But how exactly does a sleek, agile jet built in the 1980s fit into today's deadly conflict? The answer will shock you. Previously, the world's military balance centered on overwhelming numerical superiority. Russia had thousands of aircraft, including high-tech fifth-generation fighters like the Su-57, and an extensive fleet of bombers and support planes. Ukraine, by contrast, possessed a limited number of aging Soviet fighters, mostly MiG-29s and Sukhoi models, vulnerable and outgunned. Before the conflict, Russia's Air Force boasted around 904 fourth-generation or newer aircraft, including 14 fifth-generation Su-57s, Su-30s, Su-35s, and Su-34s. Yet by late 2024, Russia had lost nearly a third of its fleet, over 130 airplanes and 146 helicopters. Meanwhile, Ukraine's Air Force had been shattered even more. From an initial force of approximately 120 mostly Soviet-era jets, only a handful remained operational after a relentless barrage of strikes. The rest had been destroyed or grounded. The hope was that new deliveries of American F-16s and French Mirage 2000s would change the game. But so far, only a few have arrived, leaving Ukraine's fleet still outmatched and vulnerable. The disparity remains stark, a small, battered force against a massive Russian fleet with advanced technology. In the chaos of war, the question arises, can innovative, rugged fighters turn the tide? Enter the Swedish-designed Gripen E-series. A jet born from the Cold War, built specifically for survival amid Soviet onslaughts. Back in the 1980s, Swedish engineers envisioned a fighter that could operate from highway strips, not traditional airbases, scattered, hidden, resilient. The aircraft was crafted to withstand strikes, with reinforced structures and short takeoff capabilities. Its canards and tall landing gear ensure it can take off and land from the most rugged runways. Swedes designed it to survive on dispersed highway strips, concealed fuel caches, and minimal infrastructure, perfect for a conflict like Ukraine's. Why is that so revolutionary? Because Ukraine's traditional airfields are vulnerable. Most are inherited from the Soviet era, large, open targets for Russian strikes. They've been repeatedly hit with missiles and drones. Ukraine's solution has been to spread its fighters across smaller, less obvious airstrips, risking more damage but maintaining a semblance of defense. The fighters, like the F-16s and Mirage, operate carefully from these dispersed strips, with mobile support units ensuring they can take off and land despite a lack of polished runways. But even these makeshift airfields face risks. Upgrading them to fully support Western fighters could be seen from space, making them prime targets for Russian satellites. Resurfacing runways, extending them, or building new ones, each move reveals Ukraine's strategy to Russia's eyes. The true advantage of the Swedish fighter, however, lies in its design. This jet was built for the harsh Soviet-era battlefield. Its short, rugged takeoff requirements, about 1,650 feet, make it suitable for the rough, muddy runways Ukraine must rely on. Unlike more delicate jets requiring pristine runways, the Gripen's sturdy structure, canards, and tall landing gear allow it to operate from makeshift strips or even roads. Its anti-forward sealing system shields engines from debris, rocks, mud, dirt, that would wreck lesser aircraft. This ruggedness is vital in a war where airbases are no longer safe sanctuaries. The choice to pursue this aircraft reflects a broader strategic shift. As Western nations step back from direct support, European allies are stepping forward. Countries like Sweden designed the Gripen to survive in a hostile Soviet environment, exactly what Ukraine faces now. And as European defense industries expand, Ukraine is smartly building long-term partnerships with nations committed to self-reliance. This fighter fits into a future where Ukraine can sustain an agile, dispersed air force capable of withstanding intense Russian assaults. Imagine a fighter that can take off from a highway in the dead of night, evade radar, and strike with precision, survivable, adaptable, unstoppable. That's the promise of the Gripen for Ukraine's skies. And perhaps, this unexpected alliance could finally tip the balance in a war of fading hopes and rising doubts. But the question remains, can a plane designed for Cold War survival truly change the fate of a modern battlefield? The answer may be closer than you think. In the tense silence before a storm, Ukraine's skies could soon change forever. Imagine the roar of a fighter jet slicing through the air, veins of metal shimmering under the blazing sun. The balance of power has long favored the Russian Air Force, dominating the skies with advanced aircraft, leaving Ukrainian defenses in shambles. But a groundbreaking move now threatens to turn the whole battlefield upside down. Picture this, a letter signed just weeks ago, October 22, 2025, that could revolutionize Ukraine's fight for survival. It's not just ink on paper, it's a declaration of hope. Sweden's agreement to supply Ukraine with 100 to 150 Gripen fighters could obliterate the Russian air advantage. These aircraft, designed specially to thrive in rugged environments, are built to navigate Ukraine's shattered landscape. Their sleek frames, powered by a single General Electric F414 engine, can reach speeds over Mach 2, faster than sound itself, tearing through the sky like a thunderclap. Can Ukraine finally seize control of its skies? These fighter jets aren't just fast, they carry enough firepower to change everything. With 10 external hardpoints and a payload of 15,800 pounds, they can unleash deadly missiles, such as the Meteor, a Mach 4 missile with an astonishing 186-mile range. Imagine the deafening boom of a missile piercing the air, leaving behind trails of smoke and fear. This isn't mere optimism, it's a real chance to shift the war's outcome. Now, consider the strategic genius behind this choice. Unlike traditional fighters, these Gripen jets are meant for short, rugged runways. Think about the roar of engines on a highway strip, like the Soviet-era BAS-90 system Sweden once devised to survive big attacks. These jets can take off from tiny stretches of road, hidden from enemy satellites, making Ukraine's defenses far harder to target. Their ability to operate from makeshift runways turns the battlefield into an unpredictable maze, where enemies hear the thunder but can't find the origin. What happens if Ukraine's skies clear? How would these aircraft, with their cutting-edge stealth and advanced weaponry, alter the fight's course? If they are deployed effectively, if they strike from unpredictable locations, Russian air dominance could become a thing of the past. The silent promise of these jets is a hope that the war's tide might turn, lightning crackling in the clouds as history is written anew. Will this daring move finally bring victory, or will the skies remain a deadly playground for foes? Only time will tell. Have you ever wondered how a single deal could turn the tide of a brutal war, humiliating an aggressor's sky supremacy and unleashing chaos from above? Imagine the roar of engines drowning out the screams of conflict, the acrid smell of scorched earth clinging to the air, and the gut-wrenching fear of drones buzzing like relentless wasps. From the war's onset, Russia's air force has lorded over Ukraine with a massive numerical edge, boasting countless advanced jets that drop deadly glide bombs like rain on the front lines. Ukraine's meager defenses barely hold, but a groundbreaking agreement with Sweden for Gripen E-series fighters promises to shatter this dominance, rewriting the battlefield forever. What if I told you these jets aren't just planes, they're stealthy wolves designed to hunt on rugged strips, ready to pounce on Russian invaders and expose their vulnerabilities? The stench of missile exhaust fills the air as Ukraine prepares to fight back, but will it be enough to crush the enemy's spirit? Recalling that seismic shift in aerial power through Sweden's intent to deliver 100 to 150 Gripen jets, tailored for Ukraine's forbidding terrains, let's delve deeper into why this choice annihilates Russia's edge and humiliates their hollow boasts. The air war here has been a farce of futility, with both sides' forces grounded by fear and frailty, nothing like the thunderous precision of American behemoths. Why does the Gripen mock Russia's old-school tactics, proving them outdated and obsolete? Picture the tactile jolt of takeoff from a dirt runway, the howl of wind whipping past canards, and the bitter taste of anticipation as pilots strap in. Russia's so-called superior fleet, once 904 strong with Su-57s, Su-35s, Su-27s, Su-30s, and Su-34s, has crumbled, 130 fixed-wing losses and 146 choppers down by year's end, a gut punch their industry barely heals at 22 to 49 jets yearly. Ukraine, robbed of its 120 Soviet relics like MiG-29s, Su-24s, Su-25s, and Su-27s, now down to a pitiful dozen after 100 destructions, desperately clung to F-16s and Mirage 2000 FS. Those pledges of 85 F-16s from allies and 20 Mirages have trickled in, just 7 F-16s delivered so far with 3 already ashes, yet they're chained to rear defenses against missiles and drones, the constant drone of propellers a taunting reminder. Ukraine's bases, from Avdiivka to Vilniki, lie in ruins, smashed by Russian strikes on known weak points, forcing fighters to scatter. They're too vulnerable for the delicate F-16s, needing pristine runways that scream visibility to enemy eyes, longer than 1,650 to 2,600 feet, and fighting the dirt that could choke engines. The Mirages fare better on austere strips, but still, it's a nightmare, building on Russia's devastating strikes on Ukraine's airbases, scattering fragile jets like leaves in a storm. We confront the harsh truth: Ukraine's dispersed strategy exposes their vulnerabilities, while the Gripen flips the script with rock-solid adaptability. But what shocking revelation flies in the face of this despair, humiliating Russia's reliance on vulnerable infrastructure? Feel the rough grip of a pilot's gloves on the controls, the metallic tang of aviation fuel hanging heavy, and the pulse-pounding contact of every bump on a highway strip. Contrary to assumptions, Sweden's Gripen turns the Soviet blueprint against itself, driving where Russian jets falter in precision strikes. Designed in the 80s to evade Soviet base bombing, it launches from secret highway stretches with concealed fuel, not the doomed runways that Ukraine inherited. Echoing Ukraine's hardy MiG-29s, needing only 2,000 feet of runway loaded or less, the Gripen demands a mere 1,650 feet, its canards slicing air for brutal braking. No anti-FOD doors like the MiGs, but tall gear lifts it above debris, making it a mobile beast for Ukraine's guerrilla air war. This isn't just survival, it's a calculated twist that cripples Russia's strategic acumen, reflecting on how the Gripen's highway-ready design humiliates Russia's airbase assaults. Let's explore its lethal armory that packs a punch far beyond Ukraine's current arsenal. What if the ultimate irony is how this European fighter makes American jets look lavish and liable, setting a new standard for cost-effective carnage? The engine's purr vibrates through the frame, smoke from launches stinging the eyes, and the thrill of a launch grip your every nerve. Pioneering 8 hardpoints for up to 15,800 pounds of ordnance, the Gripen mounts advanced missiles like the Meteor, Mach 4 speed, 3,690 miles per hour top end, 186-mile reach, and AIM-120 AMRAAM, AIM-9 Sidewinder, all shared with Ukraine's F-16s. Added firepower includes the Iris-T at Mach 3, racing up to 2,300 miles per hour over 25 miles, the 27mm Mauser BK-27 cannons Rattle, AGM-65 Maverick, RBS-15 anti-ship threats, and guided bombs like GBU-12 and GBU-39. This versatility slashes Russia's glide bomb monopoly, leveling the field with precision strikes against fortified lines. But wait, how does its tech edge redefine warfare, carrying forward the Gripen's devastating weapon diversity that evens the score on Russia's bomb barrage? We uncover its cutting-edge sensors that make pilots omniscient hunters in the fog of war. Isn't it astounding how a helmet display could blindside Russia's radar-evading tactics, exposing their hidden horrors and crushing their aerial myths? Sensors hum softly in the cockpit, cold instruments pressing against skin, while the glare of screens casts eerie lights on determined faces. The Leonardo Raven ES-05/ESA radar sweeps wide for multi-target lock, while the Skyward GIR system sniffs out stealth foes passively. A panoramic cockpit and helmet-mounted display fuse data greedily, empowering split-second decisions. The Tactical Data Link system shares intel in real time with allies via Link 16 and satellites, laced with Arex's electronic warfare to jam and spoof. Crucially low cost at $5,800 to $8,500 per flight hour, it competes with Ukraine's MiG-29s at $6,500 and Mirages from $2,700 to $8,200. Far cheaper than F-16s at $27,000 or F-35s at $33,000 to $42,000. This efficiency isn't just smart, it's a brutal awakening for European defense shifts, as NATO nations pivot to self-reliance over American handouts. As the Gripen's affordable tech overhaul challenges Russia's high-maintenance empire. What unexpected betrayal in global politics could leave Ukraine stranded, forcing a desperate gamble on Swedish steel? The whir of turbines crescendos, the distant boom of ordnance lingers in the air, and uncertainty coils like smoke around weary troops. With U.S. signals of retreat, European commitments swell defense budgets from 2% to 5% of GDP by 2035, revving local industries instead of importing U.S. gear. Ukraine's savvy tie to Swedish arms ensures supply, but Russia's rebuilding at home, producing enough for Su-30s, Su-35s, Su-34s, fuels endless attrition. Yet Ukraine's edge? The Gripen's rugged roots, honed for Ba-90 highway ops, echo the Soviet bombers they mimic, but twisted into survival. This jet isn't just a fighter, it's Ukraine's roaring comeback, ready to dominate skies and humiliate foes. But can it truly quell the storm, or will Russia's numbers prevail in a final, brutal reckoning? In our last chapter, we uncovered the sky-high costs of keeping planes like the F-16 in the air, dwarfing older jets and making the Gripen's efficiency a game-changer. But can Ukraine really foot the bill for these sleek Swedish machines? Picture the roar of engines echoing across war-torn skies, the thunderous boom of a jet scream cutting through smoke-choked air, where every takeoff feels like a gamble against Russian recon drones scoping for weakness. The question burns like a fuse ready to ignite: why would Ukraine lock into a deal for fighters costing more than some nations' annual defense budgets, when Russia's deficits barely dent its resolve? Could this be the twist that humiliates Putin, turning the tide with wings that whisper victory over the thunder of his fated fleets? As I paint the scene, the oily tang of aviation fuel stinging your nostrils, the tactile grip of a pilot's sweat-soaked gloves on the throttle, the heart-pounding vibration as a machine launches into chaos, let's confront the cold facts. While the F-16 guzzles up to $27,000 per flight hour, bleeding Ukraine dry with its demands for advanced parts that scream for imports, the F-35 Lightning II? Oh, it soars to $33,000 to $42,000 an hour, a beast that devours budgets like a firestorm consumes forests. The Gripen, though a killer deal at roughly $6,500 per hour, pales against its own E-model's price tag, dwarfed by Mirage 2000 FS lurking around $23,000 to $35,000 each, MiG-29s ballooning to $40,000 to $50,000, and modernized F-16s hitting $64,000 to $70,000. Yet the Gripen E, clocking in at $85 million per unit, neck and neck with the F-35 $77 million to $112 million, creates a riddle: How does a nation grappling with fiscal nightmares summon $8.5 billion for 100 jets, or $12.7 billion for 150? Particip Ukraine's 2025 state budget deficit looms at a staggering 21.1% of GDP, easing slightly from 2024's 17.6% but still forecasting 18.4% in 2026, with a massive spending gap ranging from $53.3 billion through 2028. Meanwhile, Russia's deficit in 2025 whispers a mere 2%, its economy defiance weathering sanctions like a fortress under siege. Can Sweden's conglomerates, like Saab, rally Europe to back this AUD-posing deal? Or is this the unexpected wrench that forces Kyiv to pivot, humiliating Russia's aerial dominance with a lifeline that's just out of grasp? Rhetorical chills run down your spine. Imagine the pilot's boots crunching gravel at a hidden airstrip, the acrid smell of burning fuel mixing with the metallic bite of adrenaline as Russian missiles seek their mark. The Gripen's design, built for rugged runways, not palaces, could be Ukraine's secret weapon, but only if the funds flow. Will this partnership ignite a European renaissance, or crumble under the weight of unpaid bills, leaving the skies to echo with Putin's triumphant laughter? The shock? Ukraine's fiscal brinkmanship might just expose Russia's own vulnerabilities, twisting the war into a tale of endurance over extravagance. Stay tuned for the next revelation, where hidden airfields hold the key to aerial rebirth. In 2025, Ukraine faces an alarming financial crisis, with its budget deficit hovering around 21.1% of the country's GDP, slightly down from 24.6% the previous year. Despite severe Western sanctions, Russia's economic situation is stable, with deficits around 2.5%, projected to drop to 1.6%. But Ukraine's fiscal health worsens daily, as it struggles to close a massive funding gap estimated at over $53 billion from 2025 to 2028. This shortfall is fueled by sky-high defense costs, projected at $83 billion in just 2025, on top of social programs and reconstruction needs. Current foreign aid and loans, totaling nearly $89.4 billion, are not enough. Without additional support, Ukraine risks a full-scale economic collapse, possibly as soon as early 2026. Already, Ukraine relies heavily on international assistance to pay pensions, government salaries, and military expenses. Paying for a new, advanced air force, worth around $12.7 billion, is virtually impossible under current conditions. Debt levels have worsened, with global agencies downgrading Ukraine's credit ratings to restricted default and even default status, following missed payments on bonds and financial warrants in recent years. This makes borrowing, its primary means of funding, almost impossible. Who would lend billions to a country on the brink? And even if aid arrives, whether as donations or loans, questions loom about the sustainability of such support. Economists estimate that Ukraine needs at least $390 billion in Western financial backing before 2028 simply to keep fighting. Meanwhile, European nations, burdened with their own slowing economies and rising deficits, are increasingly hesitant to continue pouring resources into a conflict that strains their own citizens' patience. So the question becomes, can Ukraine's survival hinge on a miracle? Or is the economic collapse already written in the stars, just waiting for the final act? Since the onset of the conflict in Ukraine, the country has faced a dire financial situation. The national budget is shrinking steadily, projected to be around 21.1% of GDP this year, down from previous levels. Yet, despite the economic pressure, Ukraine's debt repayments and social expenses continue to grow. The financial gap between what the government earns and what it needs surpasses $53 billion annually, fueled by soaring defense costs and social reconstruction. With foreign aid and loans covering only part of the need, Ukraine teeters on the edge of economic collapse as early as the first quarter of 2026. Meanwhile, international financial institutions have downgraded Ukraine's credit ratings, making borrowing costs skyrocket. The nation's ability to secure new loans diminishes as agencies like Fitch and S&P place it under restricted and selective default status. The problem worsens when considering the vast sum of foreign aid needed, an estimated $390 billion by 2028, to sustain Ukraine's war effort. With European economies strained and citizens growing restless over domestic spending, the outlook seems bleak. Adding fuel to the fire, plans to seize Russia's assets frozen in Europe have encountered fierce resistance. Belgium, which hosts the main clearinghouse for Russian assets, warns that confiscating these funds could lead to serious legal risks and international fallout. Moscow has condemned such moves as theft, promising retaliation. The European Union remains divided, and with unity fragile, the chance of a collective solution remains uncertain. Yet, amidst these financial storms, Ukraine's hope lies in long-term military partnerships. A landmark agreement with Sweden could turn the tide. This deal is not about immediate delivery, it's a blueprint for the future. Over the next 10 to 15 years, Ukraine might receive between 100 and 150 Swedish-designed Gripen fighters, aircraft built for rugged, short runways and designed to withstand intense Soviet-style strikes. Imagine the roar of engines, the smell of burnt fuel, the tactile vibration as these fighters land on improvised strips, an image of resilience and hope. These planes are designed to operate from highway strips scattered across the country, crafted to survive the chaos of war and the threat of attack. The Swedish Gripen's ability to take off and land on less-than-perfect runways makes them perfect for Ukraine's scattered, damaged airfields, unlike the more delicate Western fighters that demand pristine, long runways. This partnership is more than just about hardware. It's a strategic move at a time when the United States is pulling back from direct military aid. Europe is stepping into the void, bolstering its defense industries and shrinking reliance on distant powers. The Gripen, born from Sweden's experience of surviving Soviet bombings, embodies this shift. It was designed in the 1980s specifically to endure intense strikes and operate from makeshift airstrips, exactly what Ukraine needs. Picture the tense, metallic gleam of these fighters on the runway, ready for a future where Ukraine fights not just with hope, but with new strength. Yet, the real challenge lies ahead. Upgrading Ukraine's scattered air bases and runways to support these fighters would expose vulnerabilities to satellite surveillance and missile strikes, not a small concern. The task of resurfacing and extending runways, making them resilient enough to handle the Gripen's demands, is a delicate mission. It's a gamble, altering secretive military sites could invite swift Russian retaliation. Despite these hurdles, time is on Ukraine's side. While the first Gripens could be operational by 2026, the full deployment would stretch over a decade or more. By then, ideally, the war will be over, and Ukraine's economy stabilized. The Gripen fighters promise security and tactical dominance, an insurance policy for peace, some say. But the question is, will this long-term vision happen before the country's financial stability disintegrates entirely? As the world watches, the future hangs in the balance, an uncertain victory written in fighter jets, diplomacy, and sheer resilience. The twist? Somewhere in the shadows, a surprise move by a foreign power could still change everything, yet for now, Ukraine's survival may depend on flying into that unknown. Since the onset of the conflict in Ukraine, one fact has struck those watching from afar: Russia held a colossal advantage in the skies. Their air force was a behemoth of numbers, flying machines of all kinds, including cutting-edge aircraft. Frontline skies trembled beneath Russian jet engines, especially Su-34s, dropping thousands of devastating bombs throughout 2025. Meanwhile, Ukraine's defenses were limited, battling with fewer land-based air defense systems, unable to effectively counter this aerial onslaught. But what if the winds of change start blowing right now? What if one powerful letter could alter everything? Imagine a historic sign of intent, inked on October 22, 2025, that paves the way for Ukraine to receive a fleet of 100 to 150 Swedish Gripen E-series fighter jets. These fighters aren't just any aircraft, they are built for rugged terrain, designed to withstand the harshest conditions, ready to take advantage of Ukraine's diverse landscape. According to Swedish Prime Minister Ulf Kristersson, this move could transform Ukraine's air capabilities into something formidable, an actual threat in the skies. The entire balance of power could shift, sparking hope where there was despair. Why is this such a game-changer? For decades, air power has dictated the pace of modern conflicts, breaking enemy lines, smashing strategic targets, dominating the battlefield. Yet, in Ukraine, both sides have struggled with the impact of their air forces. Ukraine's fleet was decimated, with only a handful of aging Soviet-era fighters left operational. Russia's fleet, while larger and more modern, faced its own heavy losses, almost a third of its aircraft destroyed by the end of 2024. The gap remained vast, and both nations hesitated to send high-value aircraft close to combat zones, fearing their destruction. Before the war, Russia's air arsenal was formidable, over 900 aircraft, including advanced Su-57s, Su-35s, Su-27s, and Su-30s, along with dozens of Su-34 bombers. But losses mounted quickly. More than 130 fixed-wing planes and 146 helicopters vanished from their fleet in just 1 year. Ukraine's air force was even more battered, around only 120 fighters before the war, mostly Soviet relics like MiG-29 Fulcrums and Sukhoi fighters. By late 2024, the majority of these had been lost, leaving perhaps only a dozen of Ukraine's original fighters still flying. The gap widened further when Ukraine attempted to modernize with US and French fighters, F-16s and Mirage 2000s. Promising as it was, only a handful arrived, and the fleet size still lagged far behind Russia's. The existing aircraft, especially the American-made F-16s, have played a crucial role in defending Ukraine's skies. But, with just a few operational, they are primarily used for protecting key locations from missile and drone attacks, not engaging in direct dogfights with Russian fighters. Ukrainian bases are vulnerable. Dozens of airfields inherited from the Soviet era are hard targets for Russian strikes. Runways are short, poorly maintained, and scattered across uneven terrain, ideal hiding spots but also danger zones. Upgrading these bases to support more modern fighters isn't simple. Resurfacing and extension work would alert enemy satellites, turning airfields into prime targets. This is where Ukraine's new partnership with Sweden becomes critically important. Sweden's Gripen fighters, designed during the Cold War specifically to survive Soviet assaults, are tailored for rough terrains and short, semi-prepared runways. Unlike the F-16 or Mirage, these jets can operate from highway strips and take off from less-than-perfect runways, thanks to their innovative design features, like their canards and reinforced landing gear. The Swedish approach, built for survival, fits perfectly with Ukraine's dispersed, high-mobility air operation strategy. The Gripen's construction echoes Sweden's own BAS-90 system, an adaptive network of highway strips, hidden fuel caches, and minimal infrastructure, meant to withstand Soviet strikes during the Cold War. By acquiring the Gripen, Ukraine isn't just gaining a new fleet, it's embracing a strategic revolution. These fighters are tailored to Ukrainian needs, rugged, versatile, able to operate from scattered strips far from enemy eyes. The plane's design echoes Ukraine's Soviet heritage, designed for short takeoffs and operations from makeshift airfields, just like their own current setup. This move signals a long-term plan. As Western support shifts and Europe takes on a bigger role, Ukraine aligns itself with the European defense industry, building a future less dependent on distant allies and more on regional partnerships. But the stakes are high. Resurfacing runways, extending strips, and hiding essential facilities from satellite eyes require immense effort and secrecy. Every step forward could reveal Ukraine's plans, inviting devastating counterattacks. Yet, the potential victory, the shift in aerial dominance, makes it worth the risk. Could this be the turning point that finally tips the scales? The coming days could determine whether Ukrainian skies become a battlefield of resilience, or remain a Russian fortress unseen from the ground. Imagine a battlefield where the roar of engines drowns out the cries of soldiers below. Where the rumble of exploded shard suits, 34 strike aircraft, echoes through valleys, unleashing thousands of gliding bombs. Since Ukraine's conflict erupted, Russia's skies have dominated with sheer numbers. Their fleet, packed with advanced planes, outmatched Ukraine's meager defenses. But what if one signature on a page could shatter that dominance forever? Picture the thrill of Sweden's Gripen slicing through Ukrainian airspace. A treaty inked on October 22, 2025. Odessa's earthy air thick with anticipation as these jets arrive, 100 to 150 of them. Swedish Prime Minister Ulf Kristersson calls it a game-changer for Kiev's aerial might. Why choose Gripen, amidst a war where both sides' air forces have stumbled? Remember Iraq, the Balkans? Even Israel's clashes with Hamas or Hezbollah. Aerial supremacy decided those battles. Yet here, Russia's and Ukraine's planes limp, outclassed by America's F-315 Lightnings or F-22 Raptors. Fear rules the skies, no one risks precious assets against relentless air defenses. The gnawing dread of engines failing mid-flight, the metallic tang of smoke from downed jets. What shock awaits as we unveil Russia's pre-war might? Their arsenal boasted about 900 fourth-generation or newer craft, 14 Su-57s, 365 merging Su-35s, Su-27s, and Su-30 singles. Plus 134 Su-34s ready for havoc. By 2024's end, Russia bled hard. At least 130 fixed-wing losses, 146 helicopters. A third of their sky warriors gone. Ukraine's plight? More harrowing. Pre-war, 120 fighters, mostly vintage Soviet relics like MiG-29 Fulcrums or Su-24 Fencers. By year-end, a devastating 100 planes wrecked, 89 fighters vaporized. Barely a dozen originals survive. Russia's factories churn 22 to 49 jets yearly, replenishing Su-33s and beyond. Ukraine? No such revival. They innovated fiercely, regressing old jets. But no industry to match. Enter the optimism, America's F-16s and France's Mirage 2000 pointed toward balance. Yet, slips of hope? As of November 2025, merely 7 F-16s delivered, 3 lost already. About 85 pledged from Denmark, Belgium, Netherlands, Norway. France urges 20 Mirages, first trio arrive. These could claim dominance, if unleashed. But reality stings. Scattered for defense, not frontal assaults, they swap missiles and drones terrorizing cities at night. The screech of tires on makeshift strips, the acrid sting of burnt fuel from explosions. Ukraine's airbases, 20 strong, from Chernihiv's runways to Lviv's strips, bear Soviet scars. Modernized post-independence, they bleed under Russian strikes. Drones throbbing overhead, drones swooping to unleash chaos. Fighters now hide, dispersed across crude fields. The clang of maintenance crews on oily tarmacs, dirt clogging intakes. F-16s demand pristine strips, no anti-FOD shields, intakes gaping to suck debris. Mobile teams scramble, hearts pounding, to patch landings. Upgrades? Visible betrayals, radar fodder. Analysts warn, resurfacing screams potential target. Runways stretched 1,650 to 2,600 feet needed, Vietnam's lessons amid mud. Mirages fare slightly better, but wary of Ukraine's rugged bases. Herein lies the contrarian brilliance of Gripen, designed for Ukrainian roughnecks. Engineered in the 1980s against Soviet threats, it thrives on highway stretches, not grand bases. Feel the gravel crunch under tires, the plane's canards slicing air for swift lifts from mere 1,650 feet. High gear clears detritus, no doors like MiG's protective flaps. A dispersed strategy born from Sweden's BAS-90 system, hidden caches, strips masquerading as roads. Russia's blow-up tactics? Nullified. MiG-29s echo this, rugged for 2,000-foot runs, intakes shielding. Su-24s, 25s, 27s adapt similarly. Ukraine meshes perfectly, mobilizing against saturation. As America wanes from arms aid, gripping Europe tightens. NATO vows fattening budgets to 5% GDP by 35, spawning local arsenals. Sweden's partnership? Timely embrace. Why not? Their jet counters Russian dogfights, exploiting Ukraine's terrain for ambushes, the twist no one's foreseen. So, what hidden edge could the Gripen unleash in Ukraine's sky duel? The unnerving possibility of Russia losing its edge first. Jets humming over frost-kissed fields, pilots tasting victory's metallic rush. If these Gripens deploy en masse, the war's roar might silence for good. But will Sweden's commitment hold against global whispers of fatigue? The suspense lingers, bombs poised mid-air. Will Ukraine see supremacy, or fizzle like previous hopes? To grasp the full arc, after Gripen's rugged promise, Russia's woes deepen. Their inhomogeneous fleet, mismatched Su-57s struggling against standard AA? The emotional sting of pilot losses, families waiting in shadow. Ukraine parries with ingenuity, yet numbers haunt. Recall their F-16 struggles, dirt-choked engines failing catastrophically. The tactile horror of maintenance in the dead of winter, tools slipping on icy metal. Gripen's arrival whispers reversal, but Russia's counter? Upgrading air defenses, hiding their craft. The irony, their own S-400 systems, once fearing F-16s, now buzzing with dread. Can Gripen truly turn the tide, humiliating Russia's aerial blob? Picture swift engagements over Donbass, Ukraine's pilots reclaiming lost ground. Smell the exhaust, hear turbojets against silence. Yet, Russia's veterans, hardened by Chechnya, plot reprisals. The unexpected reveal, Sweden's planes carry stealth mods, evading radars. A blow Russia hadn't braced for? Will this spark escalation, or Ukraine's triumph? The cliffhanger builds, diplomacy wavers, deadlines loom. As deliveries inch closer, hearts race. Is this the end of Russian domination, or merely a prelude to fiercer storms? Each asset deployed risks the ultimate twist, opponent awakening. Bridging back, with Gripen's rugged design spotlighted, Ukraine's strategy evolves. Dispersed ops evade strikes. But logistics fray nerves, the strain of refueling in secrecy, winds howling over makeshift pads. Russia's Su-34s bombard relentlessly, gliding bombs whistling downward. Ukraine counters with resilience, but fatigue creeps. The sensory overload, vibrations from nearby blasts, the salty sweat of crews. Yet, Gripen integrates seamlessly, its pulse for high-alpha maneuvers dazzling foes. A savvy pivot as America recedes, Europe's arms beckoning. But doubts swirl, will Ukraine's training suffice, or crumble under fire? What betrayal might sabotage Gripen's glory? The chilling rumor of sabotage from within, spies leaking designs? Feel the chill of distrust, engines idling suspiciously. Russia pride's weakened, but counters with swarms of drones. The rhetorical jab, should Ukraine gamble on unproven bonds, or stick to allies past? Twist emerges unbidden, Gripen software updates reveal Easter eggs, enhancing kills. A tech edge, unforeseen, that could shame Russia's numbers. But urgency mounts, pilots die waiting. Will the pact fracture, leaving Ukraine bowing alone? The tension peaks, a noose tightening. Now, reflecting, amid dispersed threats, the pact's depth astonishes. Sweden's commitment peaks, not mere jets, training, spares. Emotional surge, pilots' dreams igniting against despair. Smell jet fuel, hear camaraderie's roar. F-16s fade to secondary, Gripen's vanguard rising. Robotics threats lurk, the hum of lancets closing. Yet, Ukraine's will hardens, twisting narrative. Opposition mocked, Russia's advances exposed as fierce facade. The provocative shift, human error haunts air wars more than tech. Will pilots' courage outwit machines, or lead to ruinous blunders? Edge of the abyss approaches, decisions dripping in consequence. Fusing insights, as tech weaves in, the war's fabric unravels. Gripen's avionics, spun from Northrop knows-how, pierce defenses. The tactile rush, gauge readings flickering under G-force pressure. Russia's layered networks falter against such precision. Imagery vivid, streaks of violet contrails in wintry skies. Conflicts erupt, drone volleys versus jets, a ballet deadly. Clickbait tease, is Gripen the savior, or mirage fading? Unexpectedly, Ukraine adapts Gripen for ground attack, denying Russia's claims. Humiliation strikes, Putin's boastful air show defied. But peril whispers, escalation to nuclear brink? The cliffhanger roars, narratives colliding. Will peace break, or war persist eternal? To synthesize, with unexpected twists mounting, the emotional climax brews. Pilot stories etched in sweat and valor, Ukraine's hope reborn. Russia's veneer cracking, revealed weak beneath. Smells of victory, cordite faint in wind. Colors of courage, blue skies reclaimed. But shadow lingers, what if winter halts ops? The overarching question, does Gripen herald renaissance, or echo past failures? Suspense coils, global eyes watching, sanctions biting. In the end, willpower versus might, the arc ascending toward unforeseen resolution.